Hello. Good to see everyone. We have a real treat tonight. We get to hear from Vidhya Nagarajan, our Beaumont Artist-in-Residence this year. So it's always an honor to introduce any of our Beaumont Fellows, but especially tonight, Vidhya is one of our alums, one of our distinguished alums. She graduated in 2010 from WashU. And I remember from the first moment in class, I thought you were very quiet. And I was like, I don't know, it's hard to be an illustrator when you're so quiet. But within one project, I figured out Vidhya has the thing that's basically unteachable, which is like the desire to do it. She wanted to win every assignment, and her career has taken off. She's done amazing work. She got her MFA from the MFA Illustration as Visual Essay program at SVA in 2019. Some of her clients include a Google Doodle, totally jealous of that, Newsweek, Wall Street Journal, Atlantic, Penguin Books, and she's run the table on all the best awards, Society of Illustrators, Communication Arts, American Illustration, and 3x3. So, come on down. Tell us about your work. Welcome, Vidhya.
Thank you. Thanks for coming, guys. A very intimate, cozy group. Thanks. Yeah, so for those of you who didn't realize before, I'm a graduate of Sam Fox School of Art and Design, or Design and Visual Arts. Is that right? Yeah. Oh, that's really bad of me. Terrible. Anyways, yeah, so I was an undergrad here, and I think like a lot of illustrators, I didn't really know what, graphic design meant or what illustration was until I took some of my first classes in the communication design program here at WashU. So I'm just going to show you a smattering of projects at my time as an undergrad. So yeah, like John said, I was a pretty quiet person. And I wasn't the worst drawer in the program, but I don't think that I was the best either, not by a long shot. But it's very true that I really wanted to be the best or do the best that I could. And I really tried to, change up the ways that I was working for each project, whether that was a different medium or different techniques, something more graphic, or using a different brush, maybe trying dry brush, doing gouache, watercolor. I was really trying to figure out the best way for me to make stuff. And after a lot of trial and error, for my capstone project, I think I kind of came to the conclusion that I really liked this half digital, half analog way of making things. I wasn't exactly a painter. I did do a lot of gouache paintings and acrylic paintings as experiments, and I think this is a totally valid argument. I don't like the mess of those kinds of materials. Just the knowing that I'm gonna have to clean all of this up and rinse out the brushes. I didn't want any part of my process to be something that I didn't like. So I feel like just with one ink brush, that was a manageable thing to clean out at the end of my work session. And then just scanning it and having a clean place to work was how I really enjoyed making things. So for my capstone project, I had just come back from India, visiting my family in Chennai. And, if you grew up in the United States or the Midwest, more specifically the suburbs of the Midwest, going to India is especially, visually overstimulating, which was very exciting to me. There's just so much to capture and just a lot of absurd things to witness. There's animals in the streets and whole families riding motorcycles down the road together and totally disregarding any traffic signs or rules and regulations, which is great for visual recording. Also about India, we went at the height of monsoon season, so everything was just wet and flooded, and it's especially interesting to see how people just persist and get on with their days, and all the modes of transportation that can also work underwater. And just also different stalls, the way people get their food in the morning, go to the market, even under extreme circumstances such as a monsoon or extreme heat. So I think this project really gave me the confidence to start using like more varied color palettes, but like really finding a mood for the color. Like India is, of course, a very warm but colorful place. I didn't want to oversaturate every drawing with lots of color. I wanted it to feel colorful and varied, but still contain the palette. So that's kind of, I still kind of use this technique in my work now. So I know after graduation, I know some of you are seniors or are going to be seniors soon, but leaving college or leaving grad school is a really scary place to find yourself. And for me, it was especially scary just because, you know, I think there was a lot expected of me and, you know, wanting, you know, everybody, all my friends around me were getting jobs right away, and I knew that my path was going to be different. I knew it was going to be very non-traditional, but I also had this delusion that I was going to make money right away and be very successful right after, like a week after graduating college. I thought, oh, okay, I'll just send out a postcard to a bunch of art directors and I'll get work and money will magically appear in my bank account, which was not the case. It really took a long time to get my first job, and it was like a year and a half of really sending out postcards and being diligent about it and sending out postcards to different art directors once every 3 months. And I was living at home at the time, so I had lots of time on my hands, and I had the luxury of being able to create work to send out to various clients. So I would just listen to NPR all day and then make stories based off of what I heard. So I was listening to a story about penguins who got these monitor bracelets like clipped on their wings, but then that ended up impeding their swimming, so many of them drown. So, you know, I have a real love for animals, which reoccurs in my work a lot, so I sent that out as a postcard. This one over here, the yellow background, is from a Radiolab episode about a man who cut down the oldest tree ever. It was like older than Jesus, older than, you know, Da Vinci, all like, just like that story gave me so much anxiety and, and just dread every time I listened to it. I couldn't get out of my head. And my friend who runs a nonprofit organization wanted to do a print run with me to like raise money for his nonprofit. So we ended up printing this, and he found a great silk screener. And I guess, and the guys at Radiolab bought one, so that's really cool. It's in their office. And then just, these are kind of more random, but really trying to figure out maybe moving into more like a narrative style of storytelling. And down here below, this guy with the alligator, this was just from a trip to New Orleans, which I think is fun. So after like a year, I got my first job. So the top left one is my first ever paid commission. It was from Time Out Chicago, and I spent an incredible amount of time on it, even though it printed pretty small. And just look at that guy in the White Sox hat. Like, the guy in the White Sox hat, that hat is not right at all. It's jauntily, like, on the side of his head. It's just wrong. And I don't really draw people with baseball caps anymore because of this. It is a hard thing to draw, I will admit. It's very hard. This one was for, the one with all the books is the one for The Stranger, an alt weekly in Seattle. And these are all pretty much regional, which is a really good good client to have when you're getting out of school, because they need a lot of illustrators and they pay pretty well. So this bottom one here is for, I think it was for, what's the Packers, Detroit? Yeah, so the Hour Detroit. And then this one here with the umbrella is for a magazine in Calgary. And then the one with the dragon and the dim sum is for the Village Voice. So as I started getting more work, I just started, I kind of wanted to vary my style up a little bit. I was always drawing a lot of people in a little bit amount of space, and I still do that now, but just wanting to explore, different types of making illustrations. So I was able to get this commission. I had like a monthly gig from Cincinnati Magazine for about 1.5 years, and it included a lot of portraiture. And this one was about a drummer in Cincinnati named John Von Allen. and he was just like such a virtuoso on the drums. And this was the final. And then he contacted me to do some like album art for his upcoming album, which was neat. He was very flattered that I drew a portrait of him. So this was my first commission for the New York Times. It's huge on the screen, but it was smaller than a postage stamp in real life. And again, I just was so freaked out at the thought of doing this that it doesn't even look good. But I mean, I was so thrilled to get to work with them, and I had met Nicholas Bleckman at a conference, and I told him that I was going to be in New York the next week, and could I come and show him my portfolio? And he said, sure. And I went and I showed him my book, and he said not a word to me. He just flipped through the pages very casually and just handed it back to me without a word. And I was like, okay, that went awful. And then I met with some other art directors in the building, and then I just went home, and a week later he called me to do this very tiny spot. These are more for the New York Times, I think maybe a year or so after that. And in the middle, I'm just showing you how many sketches that I would make for a commission at that time. Now I only usually make 2, but I was just like overachieving, and I'm writing like stories as captions underneath each of them, which like if you have to explain your illustration that much, it's probably not doing that great of a job. But anyways, the one on the left is all about how artists, writers used to be really unhealthy and would smoke and drink, but now everybody's so green, clean, and like very health conscious and minimalist. And then the one on the right is about cops getting iPads for Christmas, just because cops, like in New York City, have to carry around heavy equipment, and they're not able to like record all the information they're able to. This was another one. This was for the Boston Globe. So here it's just like some of the process from sketch to final to then how they lay it out. This was more for the New York Times. So this was, I was working with my art director who wanted something really specific for the story. The story was all about this spa in Coney Island in New York, and it was like this Russian spa, and she wanted a very specific scene from the story to be illustrated, which is sketch B. So I just delivered that one, but then I just did my version of it, what I thought would be more interesting, because the spa was called the Mermaid Spa, and that seemed very whimsical and much more interesting for me to draw rather than like a bunch of sweaty naked people in a sauna. So I gave her option A, and she ended up really loving it and choosing that one. So that's the final and how it looked in the layout. Another one for the New York Times where this was totally up my alley because I do love drawing animals. It was all about pampered pets of New York City and like the insane things people do for their pets, like getting doggy massages and buying their cat wine, which I didn't know was a thing. Just like, and dressing them up in very fancy clothes, giving them like diamond collars. And they ended up liking both of those sketches, so both of them made it. They're like, oh, okay, we'll make one in the interior, and then we'll put one on the cover of the style section, and which was a total surprise to me, because I thought I was just doing a small spot. That's ended up being the cover. So around this time is when I decided to move to New York for my master's in illustration. And there was a lot of reasons which led me to that decision, but I think the main one was that I had just been making things in the way I had been making them for so long, and it's really difficult when you're working as a freelance illustrator to carve out time for yourself to figure out how you want to make things differently. It's possible, but I know that I needed to carve out some special time for that purpose. And I knew that school would be especially useful for that also because I love being in school. So this was a project that I did, one of my first projects in grad school. So it was a semester-long assignment where we were given a really bizarre story, and we were asked to interpret it any way we wanted. And I have not worked in like a long form narrative I guess since college, but I've never worked with a piece of writing before that was already made. So I decided to write or illustrate a children's book based off of this short story. Not really a children's book because some of the content was very adult, but I treated it as if it was a children's book. So the story was about these two very odd twins, and they had this very strange attraction to the ocean, and they were raised by a father who was with a woman who was half of a selkie, and I'm not sure if anybody knows what that is, but it's apparently half of a seal. So she was half seal, half woman, and then the twins, which they had, were also selkies, but they didn't know it. So when the mom left the family to return to her seal state, these twins were left behind and would always long for the ocean, and they never understood what the reasoning was because their dad never told them. So this was the cover for the book. And all the sketches that these aren't even all of them. I ended up making 20 final images. This is a handful of the sketches. But it was an interesting process because I never have worked, it was almost like doing storyboarding for a movie, figuring out what the characters would look like, what their costumes were, what the setting was, what kind of colors that I wanted to use throughout this long book. So here is some of my sketch process, which is just graphite pencil and scanning them in. So these are very odd twins, and they were always together. They always jump roped in unison. They would walk together. They would finish each other's sentences, almost as if they were just one being. So I decided to keep their braids almost always touching in every scene that they were in together. And that's their dad, who is trying to explain to them what a selkie actually is. And then dreaming of the ocean. Also at this time, I was very attracted to Japanese woodblock prints, and I think the inspiration really comes through here. And they're finally released into the ocean. They find their way, and their human remains as their skin encasing is left on the beach for their dad. Again, a very odd story, but one that was very, really visually rich to interpret. So immediately after that project, we were given another assignment about we could do anything that we wanted to do. So instead of doing something that was really linear in narrative, I wanted to break it up some and just concentrate on a theme and concentrate on smaller stories within that theme. So though I liked that last narrative project, towards the middle end of it, I really felt the fatigue of working on a project like that. So I wanted something that was a little bit more flexible. So I ended up doing a bunch of research about different myths about large cats throughout the world. And for this project, I wanted to concentrate on lettering, which is something that I was just starting to dive into. I was collecting a lot of images, taking pictures of every piece of signage in New York, and I spent a lot of time in the library just photocopying certain things. And every cat kind of is from a different culture, and I'm trying to tie that lettering and the type in with that culture or the mood of the cat. This is a jaguar god, a Mayan jaguar god who was an undertaker for the underworld. A Peruvian cat that would start fires for farmers if they didn't, offer up sacrifices to him. Which brings me to my thesis project, which, going back to the Prometheus tree, the Radiolab story about the guy who cut down the oldest tree ever. Something about the word mishaps really just grabs my attention because it's about anxiety, but sort of small everyday anxieties, things that happen to you every day that are either small and could seem not a big deal to someone else, or they could be rather absurd, or they could be really, really horrible accidents. But I think the word, it's just an interesting word because it could cover all of those things. So this is the cover of my book, a beaver chomping down on a chair. And similar to the last project, I wanted to try to, I didn't want to work in a linear narrative. I wanted to start working with under a theme and create smaller stories within that theme. And then as I was working, my advisor was like, yeah, these are great images, but how does it all tie together? And I was toying with this idea of like using really abstract images or shapes or something and almost treating it like a game. I would put up the abstract image that would hint at what was coming. So it's paired with just simple wording. So what was that? And then the next page. Did you hear that? So the beaver's revenge, a very absurd image. At least it didn't go to waste. He was there a second ago. Run. Pigeons in New York. Well, we'll do that to you. Meow. The worst Thanksgiving ever. So also in grad school, we had a drawing class called drawing on location, and every other Friday we would go to some part of the city to draw in real life. And I was, for the final project of the semester, we were supposed to go to some destination over and over and over again. It could be one place or several places that fell under a similar theme. And since I was in New York, I decided to just draw in pizza shops. So my first place was Joe's Pizza, which I would go at 10 o'clock in the morning on Saturdays because you see the hungover crowd and you get space to draw because Joe's Pizza is like a 200 square foot place. So I would just sit by the window because everyone takes their pizza outside and draw them. And there's a park right across the way. And then in the mornings, they box up all the boxes ahead of time, so to get ready for delivery. Another place I went to was Capizzi Pizza in Hell's Kitchen, and it wasn't very well known, but I did a little bit of research and I realized the interior of the restaurant looked like a grandmother's kitchen. And so I would go there once a week and it would be completely empty because I would go like right before the lunch rush hour. And I just made friends with the waitress and would draw the environment. Here is Prince Street Pizza, another very tiny restaurant to draw in. Here it's me like kind of like drawing over people's shoulders, kind of a mess, but I got the least amount of drawings from this place. More from just drawing on location, our teacher Carol brought in musicians to draw from in real life, and then we went to a chocolate factory to watch the women bagging up Easter bunnies. And then aside from just drawing class, I would just take mental snapshots of people that I would pass in New York City. So this woman is wearing all yellow and eating a banana. It's just too good. Like she really put together the whole look and finished strong. Just a guy in a fez holding a briefcase, an all-white guy with a white dog to match, and a white captain's hat. Just like kids sailing down Lexington, carelessly eating pizza. And, dogs wearing human clothes, riding on skateboards. And it also gave me, being in New York, of course, there's like tons of museums and galleries to go to. And I went to one Basquiat thinking it was a whole Basquiat exhibit, but it was really just the one Basquiat. And I had made this whole journey to go there, so I decided to draw something. drawing in bagel shops, drawing in coffee shops, diners, and then also kind of like taking mental snapshots of people and then going home to draw them. This guy was in Gramercy Park, and he looked like he was just from The Matrix. Like, he had a red pleather coat on, and like long dreads, riding on a skateboard. This older guy on a, what do you even call these? I don't know, something on wheels with nothing to hold on to. And he's just leaning, he's engaged his core, got the newspaper underneath his arm. And then I went whale watching on 4th of July during the pandemic, and this man decided that it was more important to keep his hair or toupee in place instead of wearing the mask in close quarters. So also something that started happening a lot is as I was able to travel more, I would create these itineraries of the day on these trips that I would take, just a way for me to kind of just like a journal for me and for my friends to give them printouts of after we're done with the trip, and just cool artifacts to have later. So here's a bunch of different examples. And usually the lettering in the center is taken from a street sign that I had seen, or some type that reminds me of the place. So this is in Tokyo. We were in a neighborhood called Roppongi, and they had this really like huge sign over a bridge, a mirrored lettering of this Roppongi sign. So then that's what I used to duplicate it in this sketchbook spread. This pizza guy comes back later. And then after that, after some of those had been submitted and accepted into some annuals, I got a call from the New York Times telling me that they were redesigning the arts and leisure section and they wanted to meet with me. And I just like froze. I'm like, who? They want to meet with me? And I went into the office, and they sat me down, and I showed them a bunch of work that I was doing and things that were in progress. And the editor was just like, okay, great, so what do you want to do? And I didn't really know what she meant, and so I was like, can you clarify? Like, what do you mean? She was like, well, we want to give you some space in the arts and leisure column to just do whatever you want, like going to different events, something about New York, and it has to just fall under arts and leisure. It's like very open. So I wrote down a huge list of things that were upcoming in the city that I thought would be good visual things to draw. And one thing that made the cut was the Kusama exhibit that was coming to the David Zwirner Gallery. So they just said, yeah, we want you to go to that, and they sent me a press pass, and they contacted the gallery and told me that I was coming. And I don't know if you guys know, but like she does those infinity rooms that you can really only be in there for like 20 seconds at a time. But with this press pass, I was in there for like 30 minutes just drawing all the people, which was a very cool experience. And just walking around the galleries and seeing how people interacted with her work and the comments that they made about her work. And again, taking the typography from that original Roppongi sign in Tokyo. And the next thing I did for them was, again, I sent them a huge list of things I just wanted to go to, and one of them was Lin-Manuel Miranda's new play, Freestyle Love Supreme, which is a show. It's basically like Whose Line Is It Anyway, if you've seen the show, but it's all done in song and dance. So someone from the audience will throw out a word or a phrase, and then the actors on stage will just make a whole song out of it or act out a whole play based off of it. So again, like very imaginative, and on the bottom fold of this, it's me just visualizing some of the things they were pretending to be or singing about. And then, unfortunately, the last thing I did for them, because this was right before the pandemic hit, was it was really my dream to go to the Westminster Kennel Club dog show in Madison Square Garden. And luckily, they thought that was a great idea, too, to send me to. So they sent me with the reporter, and we were just stunned by, like, the fanfare of this dog audience, like just going backstage and seeing how excited everyone was about like different shapes of dogs, the way that they looked, how little hair they had. It was way more interesting than the actual Kennel Club dog show. And then the subsequent days, we were allowed to go backstage. I guess like for the preliminaries of the dog show, I'm not sure, or when they're like the first round of the dog show, and seeing how different people like prepped and primped their dogs. Like this one dog, I was asking the guy, like, why are you putting cornstarch all over this dog? And it was like, oh, well, he's a white dog. It really makes him like shine. It makes his coat look extra bright. And then this woman here on the bottom is wrapping up a dog's ears in bandage tape. And she said it was because it's to prevent them from drooling on their ears. And then just like dark dogs or black dogs get dark spray to hide dandruff. And there's like blow dryers and brushes and like wind machines and photographers. It's and that part is open to the public. If you ever get a chance to go to that, it's really something to see, especially if you're a dog lover. So as some of those things were circulating, I got a call from this school called Williston Northampton School, and they wanted me to take the copy that the writer wrote and design the layout and then write all the words and design the whole spread. So that's probably the most unusual thing that I've done, just from top to bottom, like taking control of the whole spread. And they just wanted it in that sketchbook style. So this is a spread all about William Phelps Eno, who did a lot of things regarding traffic, like he invented the one-way sign, the stop sign, the traffic circle. And then another one very similar, the art director of this young adult magazine from Scholastic asked me to do their Dear Diary section. And then the New York Times had a call for submissions about drawing a comic for your most embarrassing moment. So this one's the sketch, and then they wanted the girl in the middle to look more childlike and some rearranging of the letters. So this was my Google Doodle. The thing that my family like really understood for the first time. Like, okay, this is what you do. Then we're cool with it. So this was the Google Doodle for K.L. Saigal. He was Bollywood's first superstar. So the art director just told me, yeah, here are some very grainy pictures of this man, and here are some stills from some of the movies. And so I was working on making a likeness of this man with not so great quality images, but it was really about like just capturing the mood and time of the city and just, I guess, his gesture. So the top one is what made it. The bottom one, they were also saying that, okay, like, you don't really need to spell out Google. It could be more abstract, but I guess the ladies, like, spelling out the letters was a little bit too abstract for them. So here's the final. This is moving into more pandemic-related sketchbook stuff. This is just my personal sketchbook that I keep, and this was all pandemic-related. As you can see, it's all solo people confused and in distress. This was also during the pandemic. I ended up kind of moving around a little bit during the pandemic. I was staying with friends. I came back to St. Louis to stay with family, but I was really just missing like the travel and traveling around with friends and going to different places. So I got contacted by this brewing company in Portland, Oregon, and they said, oh, we have this new beer. It's called Participatory Aces. It's an IPA, and that's all you need to know. You can do anything you want. So I was also strangely obsessed with getting a Vespa at this time. I have no idea how to ride a Vespa. I can't even really ride a bike that well, but like this satiated the need for getting a Vespa, which would be a horrible idea, just a little bit. And here are some of the sketches that I submitted for that. This one was also around last year. So this was for NPR, and this was an article with the writer's perspective was the word "desi" was not an inclusive word for all South South Indians or Southeast Asians or South Asians. The word "desi" is really about like I interpret it before I even read the article. I knew for me it means Americans who are Indian, who are from South Asia. But the writer is arguing that it's like not an inclusive term because it's excluding certain parts of like Pakistan who also should be, you know, under this category as well as like some Caribbeans and people who live in Africa. So it was like not an inclusive term to this person, this writer. And so I was trying to include some of the lettering that I had been doing as well as trying to get across that message. Yeah, also during this time, it's funny because like I think it was happening around like Black Lives Matter a lot, and people are very much we're more aware of just hiring diverse illustrators, hiring more Black illustrators, hiring people of different backgrounds, different races from all around the globe. So, I mean, I was getting a lot of work regarding people from India, and I thought that was, you know, aside from like the Google Doodle, nobody was really contacting me specifically because I was Indian or to get my point of view. But it started happening a lot more last year, and I'm working on a few projects now that have to do with this as well. So this was a history magazine geared towards kids called Honest History, and the whole issue was about India, different cities in India, different cultures, languages, foods of India. So this was about Varanasi, where it's close to the Ganges River, and it's known for a place where you go to spread ashes, but it's also known for the beautiful like temples and architecture and the merchants. And the one on the left is a coloring book page. And then also during this time, I started doing a lot of GIF work for a organization called Task Force, who then takes those GIFs and allows different nonprofits to use them on their social media channels. And some of the GIFs that I make are really instructed. They want certain things for every image or for a certain topic. Like we need something very specific about the vaccine. We need a person of color. We need a person from Latin America in the image. But then sometimes you kind of get to do whatever you want, and they are really quick turnarounds. They usually need them in like a couple hours. So this is when RBG died. This is when Amy Coney Barrett was about to get sworn in. And then Kamala Harris, when during the election, I was just working around the clock making GIFs, which was very unusual, but really a welcome change in like the workflow that I was doing. And also around this time, I guess more people were starting to notice more about my lettering because I had been making more work and putting it on my website, and also emailing people and telling my agent to start emailing more people about this kind of work because I was so interested in it, and I feel like it makes me a more diverse illustrator to also be able to handle lettering. So this was for the LA Times, for Megan not the Conqueror, Megan Thee Stallion, but the article was about how she is like taking over the music industry. So it's set behind her there. And then also for the LA Times, which is like a treat because I do love watching TV and I love The Crown. So this was for The Crown and for the woman who plays Margaret Thatcher, Gillian Anderson. And then also one for Ted Lasso. So here's like a little video of me trying to work out how to work in the lettering, which takes me way longer than it does to figure out a sketch because, I don't know, the lettering, like certain letters have to look a certain way, otherwise it doesn't look like that letter and then it doesn't read. Then there's like copy change in the middle of that, so it's me trying to figure out how to reorient everything with that copy change. And then this is the final. Yeah, so it had to be a continuous loop since it's all one big phrase coming from a vacuum wire. And here's something that I'm working on now. I'm actually just finishing up this series for the wine enthusiast, which is a great project to work on because she's very hands-off. She'll give me the theme of the article. We're talking about Australian wines, rosé wines, different like white wines and the flavor notes, how to pick the best lager. And the last one was for their 100th episode. And some of the sketches that go along with that. So this first one, the Australian wines, since I had never worked with this art director before, I really tried to spell out how things would really look in terms of value and like keeping a really tight sketch. And then for the ones after it, I think she kind of knew how the way I worked or what the illustration would look like in the end. So also during grad school, I started to silkscreen a lot. I was going to the studio every day during my thesis work, which was like very consuming, but I found that like going to the studio was almost like going to the gym for me because it is so physical. You can't really like check your phone or check your email when you're silkscreening something because like time is very much of the essence. You know, if you don't coat your screen fast enough or if you don't like spray down your screen will be overexposed, it won't work, or if you're like taking too much time to pull all your prints, then all your ink will dry on your screen. It's just such a pain. You have to start all over again. So I really found like I like silk screening, and I was just making personal projects, really just any kind of illustrations, and I kind of went wild. I was ordering tote bags, T-shirts. If any of you want a T-shirt or a tote bag, I have so many extra because no one's buying them because I made so many, and prints. So here are a series of prints that I made, all about trash animals in New York, and I've experienced every one of these. Like, of course, everybody knows Pizza Rat, but a squirrel holding a fully cream cheesed bagel, or a pigeon walking away with a full pretzel. Like my first week in New York, a rat ran over my foot, and I survived, but just barely. I was so disgusted. The next week, a pigeon like flew, and like its wing hit my face, like it was in my mouth. It was a lot. So this is an ode to the trash animals of New York City. And then I submitted these to Link NYC. I don't know if you guys are familiar, but like there's so many of these screens all around the city, Queens, Brooklyn, all the boroughs, and they just like display information, facts about the city. You can charge your phone in some of these ports, and they wanted the trash animals for display for a couple of weeks. Also relating back to the pizza shops and silk screening, I have a bunch of these prints, and I had so many of those prints, I started giving them away to pizza shops. And when I was in Tokyo, we went to a pizza shop in Tokyo and it was like a very unusual pizza. They put like sushi grade tuna on it with like mayonnaise and wasabi. It was basically a sushi pizza mashup. And that chef, Yuki, we made friends with him, and then he was coming to New York for like some event where he was cooking at a restaurant. He was like doing a restaurant takeover. And I gave him this yellow tote bag. That's us in the restaurant. He's holding the tote bag. And then like a month later, my friend who was in Tokyo like took a picture of Yuki's arm, and it's the pizza screen print. He had tattooed this on his arm. And then, like, a few weeks after that, I guess, like, Gigantic Brewing, like, distributes in Tokyo, and he took a picture of both of those things. It was just a very weird, like, worlds colliding moment, but very cool. And then also my friend Evan, I don't know, people with these food tattoos, he really likes burgers, and he just wanted me to design him a burger tattoo. So now there's 2 people that I know of walking around with my art tattooed on their arm. which is unusual, just fun things. And then lastly, here's just kind of the way that I was making sketches earlier on. Really, they are pretty tight sketches, oftentimes including value if I've not worked with that art director before, and I really want to give them a sense of what everything will look like. So these are different. Like on the far left, there's one of a map of Barnard College. The next one is the Cincinnati magazine gig that I had for a couple years. The one with the tigers is about a Newsweek publication, or for Newsweek, about like the repopulation of tigers. Yeah, here's a little one of, on the left bottom, like a book for a penguin that eventually got killed. But that's all I have. That's it.
Any questions? Sorry, sounded like David at Chomping. Hey, Vidhya, I have a question for you. What do you think about promoting yourself today? Is it a lot different than even when you first started out? Like, what's your sense of what works for people out there
I know.
today?
Yeah, it's especially different now, I feel like, because of the pandemic, and a lot of people still are not working in their offices. So where do you send, like if you're sending something physical, where do you even send it now? So I don't have the answer to that, but I also haven't sent something physical in a really long time. We usually just do email promos, or I usually have a list of people that I want to work with, and I'll send them things occasionally, but my agent is sending out like email promos like every few months, and then doing the social media thing. But yeah, I know. When I was just out of school, I would make trips to New York to go meet with people in person. And again, like, I don't know how that's happening these days, or maybe people are open to setting up Zoom meetings with students or recent grads for a portfolio review, but that's something to inquire about. Like, I would just guess people's email address or look up email address on like company mastheads and ask for meetings, and say that like I was in town for a week or 4 days, and then hopefully like they would say, okay, yeah, like come and meet with me. I feel like the New York Times is really good about that. I don't know if the New Yorker does that really. But I guess if you send out like 20 emails asking, you'll probably get like 2, maybe 3 responses. So just keep that in mind. I think that's pretty normal. Yeah.
So at the start of your talk, you were talking about your early work, your early paintwork, and like sort of lamenting like how long you spent on it and like how overworked it felt.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's interesting that like your more recent work is very like fresh and journalistic and like sort of in the moment. And I was wondering if like we're just not seeing a bunch of labor that's going on behind the scenes, or if you, I don't know, conquered your demons or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, I think there is, especially like for those New York Times ones. I wasn't doing those digitally. They were all like with Posca markers and like paint pens. And like during the events, I would do things that were penciled in or really quick, and then I would just have to take it home and finish them out later. But yeah, there was a lot of things that are not used, and I was even like cutting up things and like pasting them. I don't know why I was working on that, because it took so much, working like that, it took so much longer, but I don't know, that since I was drawing everything traditionally, I wanted everything to be traditional and have like something physical in the end. But yeah, there's a lot of things left on the cutting room floor for those, for sure. Anybody else?
Have you thought about working, because you had that project in your grad program that was a pretend children's book.
Mm-hmm.
Have you thought about working for young people as an audience?
Yeah, I've thought about it. I mean, I have some half-baked ideas about like what kind of children's book, because I would want to, author it myself, but it's not ready to send out to anybody, I don't think. Yeah.
Yeah, so you know me, I'm a senior, trying to figure out what I'm gonna do as soon as all of this ends. What benefits would you say there were to taking a break between your undergrad education and your graduate education?
Yeah, that's a good question because I waited a really long time. Um, I think there's a huge benefit. A lot of the people in my program were right out of right out of college. There were some of us that waited a long time. There were some people who were in their 40s. I think it's really beneficial. I think to get some distance from your work as an undergrad is super valuable. You get to be out in the real world and work with real clients and develop your work. And then when you go back to school, I felt really appreciative and like lucky to be there, and it felt really refreshing to be there and not just an extension of my undergrad experience. I felt like, you know, the years that I waited, I had a lot of growth and my work changed so much. So, and I feel like my work changed a lot in grad school too, and I took on all these different interests and just, I don't know, being able to appreciate different things. I think in undergrad I had no appreciation for fine art or like going to museums or galleries, and that definitely came with age and being able to be in a city like New York and going to see those things, and I don't think they really translated over to my work, but I was definitely inspired by seeing those things. So I think it's valuable to wait if you can. Anybody else?
Can I ask that too?
Mm-hmm.
What is your, like, typical day look like? Do you have a typical day?
Yeah, well, now I do. Now with this, so it's usually, so on Mondays and Wednesdays, I teach all day from 8:30 to 4. And then usually I'm going home and like working. It's different because as you know, as a freelancer, sometimes you have a ton of things to do and sometimes you don't have anything to do. I would say like 3 weeks ago was probably one of the busiest weeks ever. I was working on 4 different freelance assignments and then also teaching. So it was like I'd wake up at 6 in the morning, get in like 2 hours of work, and then go to class, work on my lunch break, and then like teach and then go back and work. So that's insane and not something that I recommend. But when I get weeks like that, I know it's only for that week, and then the next week it'll be just like slower. So I can ramp up if it's only for 5 days, but then anything more than that, it's a little bit much. But other than that, like before I came to St. Louis, it was like I was working on a lot more gifts than I am now. I had to turn down a lot of that work because it is so like time sensitive. So I was usually just working on those and then taking on like freelance work, like more in the afternoon, evening hours, and then very free and open weekends, which was nice.
All right, last call. Okay, thank you, Vidya.
Thank you.